Okay, so to fly, you must learn to let go. That's kind of a powerful thought and a really fitting way to kick off our deep dive today.
Hmm.
Um, y- One of our listeners, you sent in this piece by Jonathan Kaye. It's from his book, En route to the Sunrise Saloon, and specifically the section called Skyward.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember this one. It's his whole journey into paragliding, right?
Exactly.
Hmm.
And what really struck us about this piece was this really interesting blend of like intense passion, but also this willingness to kind of laugh at himself.
Yeah.
It's not just about achieving this incredible feat of human flight, but it's also about all those messy, sometimes even absurd moments along the way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you don't really think about all the stumbles and near disasters that must happen before you see someone just effortlessly gliding through the air.
Right. And that's what we're going to trace in this deep dive, Jonathan's journey from, that initial spark of fascination with flying, which by the way, stems from a childhood accident. We'll get into that. To his persistent efforts to finally soar in some pretty legendary paragliding locations.
Yeah, the locations are incredible, and what really hooked us was this mix of like sheer determination, moments that are just genuinely funny, and then these almost like profound personal discoveries.
Yeah, and we want to explore what fueled this drive in Jonathan and see what broader insights we can gain about learning something difficult and pushing our limits and, yeah, maybe even finding a little humor in the process.
Right, because who doesn't love a good laugh, especially when you're talking about something as intense as flying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning with that childhood accident he mentions right at the start. It's almost like a defining moment for him, shaping his outlook on life.
It really does feel like a key to understanding his later choices. This idea of living for today, which he explicitly connects to that accident. It's as if
Yeah.
that early experience with mortality or at least the fragility of life sort of paved the way for embracing something as inherently risky as paragliding.
That's a really good point. It's like that awareness of life's, precarious nature kind of instilled this urge to really experience it fully, to say yes to these intense opportunities, even when they come with a certain level of danger.
Definitely. And he even talks about that near miss with the power lines right after one of his very first attempts at launching himself into the air. I mean, you'd think that would be a sign to maybe rethink things, but instead it seems to have just solidified this pull toward flight for him.
Yeah, it's wild, right? And then we get this almost romanticized picture of flying. He talks about the freedom of a seagull, the skill of a fighter pilot. But then that image kind of collides head on with the very unromantic reality of those dunes on Martha's Vineyard, where he's actually learning to paraglide.
Yeah, that contrast is almost comical. He's picturing this elegant glide through the air and the reality is being dragged around on the sand like a runaway kite.
It's true. He even describes it as being a punching bag for the wind, a cage fight with the breeze. You can almost picture him, wrestling with this massive paraglider, getting pulled all over the place, covered in sand, and probably a few bruises too.
Oh yeah. He definitely mentions the battle scars, the cuts and scrapes that come with those early attempts. But what's striking is the persistence. Despite all the setbacks and discomfort, he doesn't give up. There's this almost relentless quality to his pursuit of flight. It makes you wonder what that internal drive was, what kept him going.
It does, and I think part of it might be tied to that early experience that we talked about, that near-death experience as a child. With like it gave him this perspective that maybe failure or even pain is just part of the process of truly living.
It's like he'd already faced a certain level of risk and come out on the other side. So maybe that made these new challenges seem less daunting in comparison.
Yeah, possibly. And then there's that brief, almost miraculous first flight. He describes 30 seconds, 30 feet, ending in a soft landing in a patch of wild roses.
Oh, yeah, and the detail about the scars from those roses still being visible years later, it's like a physical reminder of that early, almost reckless moment of achievement.
I love that detail.
Yeah.
It speaks to the idea that the most impactful learning often leaves a lasting mark on us, not just intellectually, but physically as well.
It's like those scars are etched into both his skin and his memory,
Uh-huh.
a testament to finally experiencing that first taste of flight.
Exactly. And then we come to that perfect August morning when everything aligns. You know, he finds that elusive sweet spot takes those small steps to locate the venturi.
Which, for anyone who's not familiar, is essentially when wind speeds up as it's forced over a ridge, creating lift, crucial for getting a paraglider off the ground.
Right. And then suddenly he's up soaring above the cliffs. That transition from struggling on the ground to actually rising above it all must have been an incredible feeling.
Oh, absolutely. And it directly echoes that childhood dream he mentions, the magic carpet. It's no longer just a fantasy. It becomes a tangible experience. And the fact that he felt in control for a full hour really highlights how all that persistence paid off.
So fast forward a couple of years, he's logged around 15 hours of flight time, mostly in these shorter sessions. And then comes the invitation from Dave Dodge, right? This promise of a paragliding paradise up in Quebec, Mont-St-Pierre, with its grassy takeoffs and perfect laminar air.
Laminar air meaning smooth, stable airflow, perfect for gliding.
Exactly. Sounds idyllic, right?
Yeah.
But then we get this classic bait and switch, because the reality, as Jonathan vividly describes, is a little different.
Yeah, a little different is an understatement. I mean, instead of those gentle, grassy slopes, they're confronted with this towering 2,000-foot jagged cliff. I mean, can you imagine the shock?
You know who even says, Dave, what the hell, grassy knolls? You said this is a cliff with teeth.
Yeah.
It's one of those moments where you just have to laugh at the absurdity of it all.
Yeah. You have to, and then the whole permit process adds another layer of unexpected drama, right?
Yeah.
There's this 50-hour flight time requirement, and we see Jonathan kind of sweating it out because he's nowhere near that number.
Oh, yeah. His muttered agreement of 50 is what I said, while feeling like he might throw up.
It's just such a relatable moment, that human tendency to maybe stretch the truth a little when we're really chasing something we want.
Oh, totally. And then there's the 2-day wait for the right wind conditions, those frustrating false starts with every little gust. You can really feel the anticipation building and maybe a touch of desperation, too.
For sure. And that smaller launch, it's almost a minor detail in the story. Nice, but not exactly what they were hoping for. It feels like a necessary step.
Yeah.
Maybe a way to build some confidence, but definitely not the main goal. And then there's that incident with the hang glider on the way to that smaller launch. He calls it a bad omen, which they kind of just ignore. It's interesting how sometimes we acknowledge those little warnings, but push forward anyway, driven by that underlying desire. Yeah, it's like once you've committed to a certain path, there's this momentum that makes it hard to turn back, even when you sense things might not be entirely as expected.
Exactly. And then finally on the 4th day, the wind shifts.
Yeah.
It's time for the main event, cackling that massive 2,000-foot launch at Mont-St-Pierre.
Enter Thor, right. The imposing local instructor, Jonathan, even tries to bribe him for some guidance, which is just another one of those very human moments, recognizing when you need help and being willing to try anything to get it.
Yeah, it's like a universal feeling, that panic of, oh my God, I'm in over my head, I need an expert.
Yeah.
And then the tension at that launch point being held down by Thor, feeling the immense lift of the glider, heart pounding in his chest, and then that question about his actual flight hours.
Yeah.
It's a moment of truth.
And his response, that nervous nod, it speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It really does. And then that immediate lift off the rapid ascent far above the cliff, he describes it as a mix of terror and awe, which I think perfectly captures that feeling of being right on the edge of fear, but also experiencing something incredible.
It's that cocktail of adrenaline and wonder that comes with pushing your boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then he describes this hour-long flight in smooth laminar air. It must have been absolutely breathtaking. But then the onset of air sickness, which he mentions, is a recurring issue for him. It's a reminder that even the most amazing experiences can come with their own set of challenges, even physical limitations.
It's a fascinating detail that recurring air sickness, it really humanizes the whole experience and shows that even as he's conquering the skies, he's still grappling with his own very human responses.
Right. And then the narrative shifts to 1999 and his trip to Valle de Bravo in Mexico, the Valley of the Brave. Even the name itself suggests a significant step up in intensity and challenge.
Oh, yeah. It's presented as this paragliding mecca, almost like a rite of passage for serious pilots,
And we're introduced to Chris Santacroce, his new instructor, who's portrayed in contrast to that first instructor, emphasizing Chris's greater expertise and his more supportive approach.
Yeah.
It really highlights how important good mentorship is when you're pushing your boundaries in any field, really.
For sure. A good mentor can make all the difference, especially when you're dealing with something as potentially dangerous as paragliding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then Jonathan describes the thermal conditions in Valle de Bravo, these incredibly powerful updrafts of warm air that can propel you thousands of feet into the sky. It paints this picture of a much more dynamic and volatile flying environment than he encountered before.
Oh, yeah. And the fact that reserve parachute deployments were a frequent occurrence there definitely adds to that sense of excitement and inherent risk.
It does. It's like the stakes are just higher in Valle de Bravo.
Yeah.
And he manages to log 6 hours of flight time in a single week, which is a a huge accomplishment.
Hmm.
But even with that progress, he still talks about that pre-flight anxiety and the need for that roll of toilet paper before each launch. It highlights that overcoming fear and managing nerves is often an ongoing process, not a one-time victory. You know.
It's a good reminder for all of us, really, that those feelings don't just disappear overnight, even when you've achieved a certain level of mastery.
And then comes that first cross-country attempt and that unforgettable downwind landing in the cornfield. The nickname Plowboy. You can't help but chuckle. It's another one of those humorous mishaps that are just part of the learning journey.
It really is. And what's so lovely about that anecdote is the reaction of the local community. They embrace the pilots. They even see them as almost mythical sky gods, and they're genuinely willing to help out with things like packing gliders for a small tip. It speaks to that camaraderie that exists within the paragliding community and how it extends even to the local inhabitants of these flying destinations.
I love that detail. It shows how the shared passion can really transcend cultural boundaries. And then this story takes this completely unexpected turn with that jungle ceremony, right?
Right.
The man in the white robe, the dream catchers, the mushroom tea, and that intense sweat lodge experience. It's this surreal, almost mystical element that suddenly gets woven into his journey.
It's so unexpected, and it really makes you wonder about the role of ritual and tradition in pushing personal boundaries, whether it's something as ancient as a sweat lodge ceremony or something as simple as Jonathan's pre-flight routine with the toilet paper. It seems like these rituals can serve as a way to ground ourselves and prepare mentally for the challenges ahead.
That's a really interesting point. And the fact that he has continued successful flights after that ceremony and leaves Valle de Bravo feeling great, it does make you wonder if there was something to that experience,
Yeah.
Or at the very least, it seems like it put him in a very positive and confident state of mind.
It definitely adds another layer to his journey, right? It's not just about mastering the technical skills of paragliding, but also about these unexpected avenues of personal growth that can emerge along the way.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we followed Jonathan, haven't we? From those clumsy starts on those windy dunes to soaring over the dramatic cliffs of Quebec and the thermal-rich skies of Mexico. His story is this tapestry of setbacks and determination, moments of humor, and these surprisingly profound experiences.
Yeah, and for you, our listener, what we hope really resonates are those lessons about perseverance. The repeated difficulties he faced didn't break him. They actually seemed to fuel his desire to fly. It's a testament to the power of pushing beyond your comfort zone,
Yeah.
even when fear is a constant companion.
And as we saw in Mexico, there could be these unexpected rewards,
Right.
The camaraderie of fellow enthusiasts, the immersion in new cultures that come with pursuing something you're passionate about.
Exactly. And, you brought this excerpt to our attention, and it beautifully illustrates how the pursuit of something that truly excites you, something that calls to you on a deep level, can open up these unforeseen paths of personal growth and these unique life experiences that you could never have predicted at the outset.
So as Jonathan so eloquently put it, to fly, you must learn to let go.
Hmm.
And that idea, I think, extends beyond just the physical act of paragliding.
Hmm.
It speaks to this willingness to embrace the unknown, to let go of our fear and see where our passions might lead us.
So considering Jonathan's relentless pursuit of flight, despite all the bumps and bruises and even that persistent air sickness, what is one seemingly daunting goal that you might be underestimating your own ability to achieve? What wind are you willing to wrestle with to persevere through the challenges for your own chance to soar in whatever way that resonates for you?
That's a great question to ponder. And on that note, we'll leave you to contemplate your own personal wins and the heights you might be capable of reaching. So until next time, keep exploring, keep pushing those boundaries. And as always, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for listening, everyone.